All right, for the first time in a couple of months, we're back here on an episode of the Next Panel podcast. This time talking about something other than Star Wars and Marvel. We're talking DC's The Batman, of course, 2020 version, now just a couple of months ago. Available right now on HBO Max for anyone who hasn't seen it. And if you haven't, what the hell are you waiting for? But we got a stacked panel per usual. Doc, you're back. I feel like I haven't spoke to you in 10 years. What's going on, dude?
Oh, not much. I waited until this was on HBO Max to see it, so I'm glad we waited so long to talk about it.
This isn't meant as a plug for HBO Max, by the way, but it is easily accessible for anyone that has an HBO Max subscription account. The movie only came out, we're talking now on April 28th. This will probably be out tomorrow on Friday the 29th, but the movie only came out a few short months ago. Already, I didn't know until like 3 days beforehand, because it came out, I think, not this past Monday, but the Monday before that. On the 18th, I believe. So that's pretty cool that it's already out on HBO Max. I didn't think it'd be that quick, but that's awesome. Phil, you're back here as well. You're on the Twitter machine, Phil DL616. Phil, what's going on, man?
I'm good. Good to talk to you again. It seemed like it's been a minute since we talked to each other.
I know. I missed you in Dallas. I wanted to see you in person, but there was so much stuff going on. So hopefully the next time, whether it be in Chicago. Are you going to the Forbidden Door show, by the way, Phil?
Am I? What kind of question is that?
Yeah, I guess that's a stupid question.
In Chicago, New Japan, yeah, of course I will.
Man's probably going with at least one credential.
Come on, man.
That's great. I don't know if I'll be able to make it to that show. I'm hoping they're going to do Chicago they're going to do All Out in Chicago again, but we've talked about that. We'll see. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that. But nonetheless, we got your Grab City partner here on the line as well, Will Washington from the Grab City podcast, among other things. Will, you're on Twitter, William RBR, making your a podcast debut with us here today. You're a man of many podcasts. Will, what's going on, man?
Hey, thank you for having me. Yeah, that's I'm sorry. I was like eternally laughing so hard at the idea that any show would end up in Chicago that big and Phil wouldn't be at it. Because I will also be there. I'll also be at All Out or not All Out, at Forbidden Door. Maybe All Out, I don't know. And then also Double or Nothing and all of that. But yeah, it's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, no.
I haven't done an audio podcast in so long because everything I've been doing has been video for the last 7 months.
Well, yeah, kind of speaking of which, going off of that, I mean, we talk to Phil all the time here on the show. Obviously, he's a regular along with Chris and I. But talk to us a little bit about the Grab City podcast that you and Phil do, where people can find it every week. Obviously, part of Fightful, available on Saturdays. You guys do it, right?
Yep, every Saturday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, youtube.com/Fightful. Grab City is a show we've been doing about 7 months now, almost 8. Launched back in October. It is myself. It is Phil Lindsey. It's Righteous Reg as well. 3 black men talking about pro wrestling and the top 5 topics of the week, or at least our top 5. And it's irreverent. It's funny. It's the highlight of my weekend. I don't know about everybody else, but yeah, if you haven't checked it out before, Grab City is available at youtube.com/Fightful every Saturday.
Awesome, man. Yeah, you guys do great work. Now, do you guys ever have a chance, or you will specifically, do you ever have a chance to speak about other stuff beyond wrestling as far as like the Marvel and DC stuff go, as far as your podcast are concerned?
I don't get a chance to, so this is going to be fun for me because I am a big comic book aficionado, period, and definitely when it comes to comic book movies. Back when I hosted RBR on the Patreon, I did get to review various Marvel movies or various DC movies, depending on which was topical at that moment in time. So when Chris reached out to get to talk the Batman, I'm a big Batman fan. Let me think about this. Off the top of my head, nope. The only Batman movie I never saw in theaters in my lifetime was Batman '89, and that's because I was 2. But every single one of them, I made sure I was in theaters for. I was even, it's one of my, I guess, famous stories that I live in Aurora, Colorado. I was there for the Dark Knight shooting, or the Dark Knight Rises in 2012. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that's going on 10 years ago. So that's Batman and me go hand in hand. I saw this movie the moment it came out. I was at I saw it, I guess, the night before its official release. I did one of those Thursday night releases. Mm-hmm. So it's not exactly fresh in my brain, but it is one of those things where I'm just such a Batman guy that none of it has disappeared in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with that being said, you're probably the perfect person to have on this podcast, being a big Batman fan. But with that being said, in addition to all the other, because we've had so many Batman, either movies or him being involved in other stuff, obviously with Justice League, Batman versus Superman. Just overall, before we get into the specifics of stuff, and I'll get to Chris and Phil in a second, how would you compare this to other Batman movies that we've seen in the last 10, 15 years, and just the amount of movies we've seen him in with obviously various actors?
I mean, it's hard to compare because it's not the same type of movie at all. It's, and I've even talked to people who were disappointed thinking going into it that it was going to be like the other Batman movies, and this was nothing like any Batman movie you've ever seen. And so it is hard to compare for me. I think it just kind of stands on its own as something unique. I guess you can compare who Batman is in this movie to, I suppose, other interpretations of Batman, and specifically Bruce Wayne, because you don't really get a Bruce Wayne in this movie. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But as far as how it compares, that's really hard for me to say, because in the same way that, like, I could compare a movie like The Dark Knight to Batman 89, or I could compare even Batman Begins to Batman versus Superman. But in this particular instance, this movie is nothing like any Batman movie you've ever seen.
Yeah, what about you, Phil? Did you like the fact that it was so different from other iterations of Batman that we've seen in the last 10, 15 years? Or were you expecting something similar to what we've seen before and you were disappointed as a result?
I like that it was different. The fan of the comic in me really enjoyed certain things, like watching it and going, okay, this is from that book. This is clearly from that book. Like, this is an amalgamation of this. And that was cool. There was certain things about the Bruce Wayne stuff that kind of didn't work for me, but other than that, I mostly enjoyed it.
Did you like the fact that we didn't see Bruce Wayne, like Will just said, we didn't see Bruce Wayne a whole lot in this movie? Were you expecting to see more of him? And what else would you have wanted to see done with that part of the character?
I mean, this version of Bruce Wayne just isn't Bruce Wayne to me. It's like a Kurt Cobain version of Bruce Wayne that is like constantly like melodramatic and depressed, which makes sense in tone with who Bruce Wayne is as a character. But for me, it's just not a great interpretation of the character. Like, all of the Batman stuff worked great, but just Bruce Wayne stuff was just like, nah, I don't really care for this depiction.
Would you agree with that, Chris, as far as how they portrayed Bruce Wayne in this movie? And we didn't see him a whole lot, but from what we did see, would you agree with what Phil said?
Yeah, I do. It's weird because I understand what they wanted to accomplish with this version. Like, they clearly established that this is only his second year as a crime fighter, so he's still learning certain aspects of what will eventually become the greatest detective. And being the charismatic Bruce Wayne that hides the dark Batman is something he hasn't really done or perfected yet. So I understand that approach. I just don't necessarily think it was the best in this movie, because I know Robert Pattinson can act like a playboy if he wants to. Like, he could have pulled that part of the role off if they'd given him a chance. But again, it's like, we've seen that already. So I sort of get why they wanted to do something different. And that, I think, is the most difficult part of Batman for a filmmaker is, what do I do that hasn't been done in the Nolan versions, in the Snyder versions, in the Tim Burton versions, in the Schumacher versions, even in the Adam West versions? Like, if you're going to make a new Batman movie, you got to make it unique or people are going to tear it apart. So I respect the fact that they did try and go with a completely different version of Bruce Wayne. I just don't know if it's the one that I would have liked the most, you know?
Yeah, I mean, with what? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that. Yeah, so, part of the reason why I said in the beginning that they didn't really go with the Bruce Wayne is because I feel like that's kind of the story here. That, like, the story they're telling in this sense is that who Bruce Wayne truly is at his core is Batman. And that the Playboy persona is kind of something that is a mask he puts on to mask who he truly is. And I think with this as a story establishing who Batman I kind of establishing that he's just getting started as Batman. I kind of felt like we could get there eventually. Like, maybe next,
like especially because we're gets 3 movies, he'll get there.
Yeah, even in the next movie, just something like an Alfred simply telling him, "Hey, people are starting to wonder why you're not out there as much." And there was all the talk about the things he's not doing with philanthropy and not doing with his money, and people wondering why he's so reclusive. Like, then that's the point where you can say, all right, he needs to establish another persona, and he's just not there yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. And especially like you had said, Chris, if we're going to get more movies, there's still plenty of time to get that development, which I think they had just officially announced at least one of the first sequels. I'm seeing now on Wikipedia, it's saying 2 sequels were planned along with 2 other spinoffs. So they already have a whole shared universe announced for this thing. But yeah, there's plenty of time for them to further establish that character and develop it. But going back to what you were saying earlier, Chris, about Robert Pattinson's portrayal of the role, playing that Playboy-esque character that you said that that he could do. When this was initially announced a couple of years ago with him in the role as Bruce Wayne, as Batman, obviously a lot of skepticism, a lot of criticism regarding, he's known to a lot of people as the guy from Twilight. I don't really have an opinion on him prior to this movie, one way or the other, having not seen the Twilight stuff or really anything else he's been in. But I thought he did a great job in this movie and really exceeded a lot of expectations for a lot of people. But for you, Chris, can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on him when he was announced for it? It sounded like you were a little less critical of it as many other people were.
Oh, yeah. I didn't have a problem with the casting whatsoever because everyone they've ever cast that has been criticized before we got to see the movie knocked it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Keaton was not somebody anyone thought would be a good Batman. Like, if you go back and look up the articles that came out around the time that movie was announced and things like Variety, they're like,
Mr. Mom
is going to be Batman? Like, what is going on? It was ridiculous. So, same thing happened with Christian Bale because he had just done a movie called The Machinist where he literally starved himself in real life to get down to like 109 pounds. And people were like, there's no way he's going to look like Batman after making that movie. And
very weird movie. Have you ever seen that movie, Chris?
Oh, I have that movie on DVD, and I don't know why I bought it because it's strange as fuck.
It's weird that's kind of a normal thing for superhero movies in general now. In like hindsight, when you think about certain people who got cast in certain roles, and the general thought is, well, that guy? And then it's like in hindsight, because I always think about how funny it sounds now when the announcement of Thor was made, right? And it was like, they just cast this unknown guy, Chris Hemsworth, to play Thor.
Everybody wanted Triple H.
What?
Well, do you remember that? There was a literal fan campaign to get Triple H cast as Thor.
God, that would have been awful.
Because he was walking around with the sledgehammer. He had the long hair. He had the beard. Like, honestly, at the time, because superhero movies were still not as serious as we take them now, I thought Triple H could pull it off. Because I'm like, fuck it. Let's give him another chance after Blade 3 was terrible. But that's it. Blade was terrible because Wesley Snipes destroyed that movie.
I found.
Wait a minute now. Wait a minute.
Let's go dive into that. Well, I did find the original article from May 19th. Oh, May 19th came, but May 19th, 2009. That's by Mark Graham for Vulture, titled "Marvel Rolls Dice Casts No Names for Thor." And it said, despite rumors that had everyone from Shia LaBeouf to Josh Hartnett being cast in Kenneth Branagh's version of Thor, 2 virtual unknowns will be handed the keys instead: Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston. And again, that's funny stuff to me because, again, going back to Michael Keaton, this is kind of the norm. People don't really know what to expect when somebody who might traditionally be known for something like Twilight or comedies or things like that get cast in these superhero roles. But I feel like by now we should expect that something obviously went right in the audition to make this person get put in that role. I'm sure nobody thought that that what's his name? Tom Holland. I had Hiddleston in the brain for the last 30 seconds, obviously, but Tom Holland. I'm sure nobody looked at him and thought Peter Parker, right? But then, like,
but he
obviously,
could flip.
yeah, but he could flip, and then obviously he puts on a great American accent.
I guess he literally went into his audition and did a flip off a chair.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, this is Spider-Man.
Remember how mad people were that they cast Chris Evans?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
like,
because everybody's like, he's such a sarcastic douche, it's going to be the Human Torch again. And frankly, I was of that opinion too. The only one of those castings that I thought was dead on was Downey, because I was like, I was like, you're going to cast a guy who's had real substance abuse problems as an alcoholic? He'll definitely know how to play that role well.
Yeah, that's the one I do remember that everybody was kind of unanimously like, okay, this guy is going to be Iron Man. He's going to be Tony Stark. He's perfect. But beyond that, I feel like it happens every time somebody new gets cast.
But I felt like Pattinson, he didn't get it as bad as I would have expected him to get coming from the Twilight stuff. And I think that's because he went out and made such a name for himself in independent movies as being a versatile actor that a lot of people were like, no, you guys don't understand. Twilight's not all this guy can do. He actually is good. Give him a chance. So I think he had a lot of people on his side.
You know what I really think it is, though?
More so than even Affleck did.
I feel like a lot of people, whenever there's like a Batman casting, to me, it's almost like social media is immediately like, okay, what's this guy's jawline like? Because that's the most important thing when it comes to putting this guy. Cowl? Yeah, how's this guy going to look in the cowl? Because that was so much discussion around Ben Affleck and like, but look at his chin. Like, it's not going to look right. And like, I feel like when Robert Pattinson was cast, everybody's like, not the jawline. He's got it. He's perfect.
Yeah, it was the same thing with Henry Cavill. Like when Henry Cavill, when those images of him came out before the Superman movie, everybody's like, oh my god, yeah, he's Superman.
Yeah, it's like sometimes when they just look it, you don't have to ask any other questions.
Yeah, but yeah, I going back to Graham's original thing, I do think I liked Pattinson's casting because I was like, all right, they're going with somebody who's relatively young. This isn't going to be Affleck again. He can actually play the part for 10 or 15 years if that's what he wants to do, and that's what Warner Brothers decides to do. So, like, in my opinion, this is the movie they need to use to launch their new universe if that's what they want to do.
This isn't going to be tied
to
the Justice League stuff, right? This is going to be completely separate from that?
Yes, This has no association with the Justice League universe. As far as I can tell, they're not trying to tie it into the Joker movie. Okay. This is a brand new...
Because there are few visual cues that are similar to the Joker movie. I noticed that.
Yeah, but there's no way that the character we see at the end, played by the dude from Eternals, is supposed to be Joaquin Phoenix's character.
No, I don't think so either. But I did notice like this was like very similar in some ways to the Joker movie. Like even the title at the beginning gets very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's very similar in tone, but I think that it would be really hard to tie those universes together.
It definitely would.
The only way they could do it is if they implied that Arthur Fleck wasn't the Joker. He was the inspiration for who would become the Joker. Which is a theory that I kept hearing getting thrown around.
Yeah. That's what I thought I had heard several times, that he's not actually the Joker.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, they did that on Gotham. I don't think they're going to do it again in the movies.
I mean, it's DC. They do wacky stuff.
That's true.
That's not something, you mentioned how it could be possible, Phil. That's not something you would want to see, right? Or is it something you would want to see tied together if it was possible?
No, I don't necessarily want to see it. I wasn't the biggest fan of the Joker movie, but I did see very similar. I did see the similarities there.
I guess I don't necessarily see the necessity. Like, for example, what you just said. Because what you just said could be true, that Arthur Fleck could have been the inspiration. But also, like, you don't gain or lose anything if he was. If that could,
are they still making a sequel?
That could honestly be entirely headcanon to people, and it's fine. Or it could not, and we're fine.
Did you like the Joker, Will, or no?
Phil, I do think a sequel was officially confirmed not that long ago.
Interesting.
That's what I thought, too. Did you like the Joker, Will? Because I feel like I'm in the minority here that actually enjoyed the movie. I understand why you guys wouldn't like it, but I actually really liked the movie. But what about you, Phil?
I like it. I like it on its own. I think that as a Joker movie, I'm not that into it. But I think that as a movie that was like, hey, we're gonna write a movie about the deterioration of the mind, but it would probably appeal to more people if we called it the Joker.
Yep.
When I think of it that way, I'm like, okay.
Didn't Joaquin Phoenix actually say that in one of his award speeches? Like, we wanted to make a movie about mental health, and we tricked them by making them think it was a Joker movie.
Did he say that? Because that's how I felt.
I think he literally said that. Like, he's like, yeah, we wanted to make a movie about mental health, so we tricked the studio into giving us money for a Joker movie.
Yeah, like, I could absolutely see even somebody, like, saying, okay, we could greenlight this, but, like, for the budget you want for this, it would have to have a return, and to have that kind of return, the Joker is the name we should attach to this. And I think it worked, if that's the case.
Yeah.
I think if you just look at it that way and look at it just as a movie that's trying to tell that story and not necessarily as a DC movie, I think it's a great movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was definitely the biggest criticism against it was the fact that I think it was a very good movie, but it just wasn't a good Joker movie. Would you guys say the same thing about this, or is this just a great Batman? I mean, this was a great movie. I know a lot of people that aren't big on the superhero stuff at all that saw the Batman and really enjoyed it. Was this a great Batman movie in addition to just being a good movie, would you guys say?
Doesn't matter. So, yeah. I thought so. I thought that it was... it's kind of tough because I think it is a great movie. I think that there's so much despair in the movie, and that's one of those things that's kind of hard for me to get over because, one of the things that The Dark Knight gave us was the redeemable factor of Gotham. Whereas I feel like this Gotham would have blown up both boats, right? But like in this case, and I think that was kind of the issue I was a little bit having is that there was so little redeemable about this Gotham City. But at the same time, that's what the ending gave us, was that eventually it maybe could get there. Yeah. But it was just so dark and there's so much despair.
There's a lot of despair. What about you, Phil? What were you going to say?
I do think it's a very good movie. I also think it's a good Batman movie because even though, like I said, I kind of butted heads with some of the depiction of Bruce Wayne, I do think it got right the first 2 years of Batman being so angry still and his methodology changing by the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's definitely different in that respect as well. What about you, Chris? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think this is a good movie. As a movie, like if you judge it on the things that you judge traditional movies on, everything is in place here. Like the cinematography's great, the directing's great, the acting's great, the writing's great. But I'm also I'm of the position that I get why somebody might not like this portrayal of Batman, and I don't think it's a knock against Pattinson. It's the fact that Batman keeps getting more and more depressed in every version we see. Like, if you go back and start with, I know the Tim Burton ones are one thing, but if we start with the Schumacher ones, where Batman is almost like a well-adjusted person in those movies, and then you look at forward, we get the Nolan ones, and yeah, he's still pretty depressed in those movies, but he's actually smiling in some scenes. Like he's not.
Wasn't he seeing a therapist in the first Schumacher movie?
Oh man, he might have. But
yeah, that was
Chase
that
Meridian.
Was the whole Chase Meridian character.
Yeah.
She was a therapist.
So I think it's some people are just tired of, and I know that that's part of the character, but some people are tired of the depressing version of Batman, and I get that. But I think this movie does stand on its own pretty well. It's a really good Batman story that's not an origin story, but not an established character story either. Like it walks that line really well without having to show you a million flashbacks, even though there are some things I wish they would have expounded on that I hope they go into in the sequels. Like, I would have liked to know a little bit about what his training process was. Like, is this a Batman who's been trained by Lady Shiva, or is this a Batman who trained himself? Like, I would like to know that, but it's not going to kill my enjoyment of the movie not to know that.
Yeah, no, just little nitpicks. Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
It seemed like they're doing the Earth One stuff, because it looked like they had like the Alfred M1 stuff, because he said he dropped that line like, "I taught you how to fight." So I'm assuming that's what they're going with.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, especially since just the tone of it, and there it's funny that you mentioned, Chris, that there was a lot of stuff they didn't overly explain or really get into. Yet the movie is almost 3 hours long. Like, they obviously expanded upon a lot. Like Will said, there's a lot of despair, and it doesn't even pick up until like the last. I can't even say the last hour. Like, it really is like that final act, whatever you would define that as. That was obviously another big criticism of the movie. Nothing that ruined it for me personally. I don't think a lot of people. It was just one nitpick, I think, was the runtime and just especially the tone of the movie. It's not like it's all action or there's exciting stuff happening every 5 minutes, which is probably for the better. But the pacing of it and the length of it specifically was an issue for some people. Again, not enough to kill the enjoyment, but just a nitpick nonetheless. What about you, Chris, as far as the runtime of it? Was it an issue? Did you agree with that, not agree with it, whatever?
I had to take a break halfway through watching the movie, so I'm glad I waited till HBO, because it's kind of a slow moving movie for a superhero movie.
Yeah,
which does not bother me. Like that, I don't hate that part of it at all. In fact, I kind of like the fact that we actually got a lot of dialogue and character development and things along those lines. But I could also come at this from a standpoint of an editor and be like, yeah, there's at least 30 minutes of superfluous material you could have cut, and this movie would have felt exactly the same, just more streamlined. But that's not what they wanted to do here. They wanted to go for this really moody, drawn-out thing, and that was intentional. So it's hard to be mad at it because it's what they were going for. It's just, 3-hour movies are kind of tough, and after having to sit through the 4-hour Justice League thing recently, it's like, all right, let's just get a streamlined 2.5 hour Batman movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's definitely some stuff they could have cut out. What were your thoughts in the runtime?
Yeah, I actually. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to throw it to you. Will, you go right ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say I actually had to trick my wife. I didn't tell her how long the movie was going to be going into it.
God.
Yeah, it was because I knew she was going to say no.
Yeah, smart.
She's like, "Wait, we're sitting through what?" So that was just one of those funny things where I absolutely did not tell her how long that movie was going to be, and she was, I think, at every turn kind of expecting it to be over because there were multiple points where it probably could have been, and certain acts that could have been their own movie in itself, and it just wasn't. It just kept going.
Did your wife like the movie, Will?
Yeah, she had some complaints. A couple of them were that in this movie, 2 major bombs went off that probably should have killed everybody in the vicinity and didn't. Specifically, Batman has a bomb go off in his face and is fine. And then also like. Alfred also had one go off, and she's like, that was way too close for him to be as okay as he was.
Yeah, I expected him to die, yeah.
Yeah, and also, Bruce, let that man, wake up and realize where he was. Because the fact that Alfred was just laying up in this bed after having a bomb go off in his face and is in this coma, and as soon as he comes to, Bruce is just like, you lied to me. And like, whoa, hey, I don't even know where I am.
Bruce is a little bit of a dick to Alfred in this movie. Because there's the one scene where he's like almost mocking him for wearing the Wayne family cufflinks. And he's like, your father gave those to me. They mean a lot to me. And it's like, dude, this guy's your caregiver. Like, where's the Bruce and Alfred relationship that Alfred had with Michael Keaton, where they were like pseudo father and son? And maybe we're building to that. Maybe that's something that will happen in the next version, but I don't know.
Yeah, again, that's why some of the Bruce Wayne stuff, it just didn't jibe with me. Like him being so mean to Alfred, and like some of their interactions just didn't feel like human interactions. Like when he walked in there and he was like, "Hey, here's some blueberries," and he's just like eating them. I was like, "What is this?"
Giving Alfred a little more to do, though, I did like that. Like, he was the one who was going through and trying to work on the cipher that the Riddler had sent out. Like, he wasn't just the butler, and they've been doing that in more versions recently. Like, now we even have this Pennyworth show that shows Alfred as, like, an SAS spy, and we're starting to see that badass version of Alfred be brought into canon more, which I actually appreciate, because it never made sense to me that Alfred would just be a butler.
We've seen several other people do that. Like, I thought that was the interesting thing with Bel Air, where Jeffrey was not just a butler, he was also like a fixer character. I like that they took that bit from Earth One.
I mean, you mentioned the Riddler, Chris. What were your thoughts on Paul Dano's performance as the Riddler in this movie? Because I had seen mixed, just from people that weren't huge Batman fans. I thought it was very good. I thought he did a great job, especially towards the end there in the interrogation scene. But what were your thoughts on him as because there's a lot to really live up to, especially with the Joker. I mean, his name is escaping me at the moment, but you know exactly what I'm talking about from Dark Knight. Obviously,
Heath Ledger.
Yeah, Heath Ledger. I mean, obviously, there's a lot to live up to there from that movie. But I thought, in his own right, he did a great job.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Riddler in so many previous versions has been a joke character.
Mm-hmm.
And to see him used as like the psychopathic, obsessive, more than willing to kill somebody to mess with Batman version was nice, because I don't think we've really gotten that version of Riddler in live action till now.
Mm-hmm.
Up till now, it's been Jim Carrey and Frank Gorshin who did it in the Adam West version. Like, that's pretty much it. So it was cool to see a new interpretation in live action of the Riddler, and I think Paul Dano is a great actor who is good at channeling that creepy side of the character, because every time he was out of the mask, he's just so unnerving to watch.
Yeah, especially towards the end there, the more unhinged that he gets, and thinking that Batman is like on his side as well. And I thought for a second that he knew that Bruce was Batman, but I guess it comes out that he didn't know. But it just kind of, it seemed like it was implied there towards the end. Maybe he does and he's playing dumb, but that's a different discussion. But what were your thoughts?
Well,
Phil?
I thought that was supposed to be kind of a swerve there, right? That like he was about to, like you could see the look in Batman's face, like, oh crap, he knows. But then it turned out that like he didn't. And I think that was just a moment to kind of grip us and then turn it around.
Good point. Yeah, that was probably intentional.
I think he does know, though, and I think that he said several times in the movie, like, a riddle is not good if you tell everybody the answer. And so I think he knows, but he doesn't really care to let Batman know or everybody else know, because that's not the point. Like, he doesn't want everybody to know.
Interesting. Well, what were your thoughts overall of Paul's performance as Riddler, Phil?
I thought he was great. I thought he was one of the highlights of the movie. I had my I had my skepticism with like the Zodiac thing that they were doing with Riddler, but I like it in a sense that I feel like it's going to lead to him doing more of the, how do I want to put this? More of the the campy stuff with Riddler later, because I feel like they went the entire movie of trying to say like Bruce and Edward are kind of mirrors of each other, all the way down to their looks. Like, even when he saw him, he was like, my mask is similar, and his mask really is similar. And so I liked all that stuff. I liked the exchange he had with Joker, and I like where that's leading. Yeah, I thought it was great.
What about you, Will?
So I feel like we didn't really get as much of the Riddler that we know until really that second to last act, once we finally got to see him unmasked. So yeah, we got more of a Zodiac type character. And so it's almost hard to judge what the Riddler, like, he didn't really feel like the Riddler in that sense, because we didn't really get to see Paul Dano as Paul Dano, stringing Batman along the way we've gotten with previous iterations of the Riddler.
Mhm.
And I maybe would have liked to have seen more of that. As far as the Riddler character was concerned, I think it was interesting that he kind of had Batman at every turn.
He manipulated him the whole movie.
Yeah, like at no point was Batman ahead of him at all. And you know, and that's always kind of been kind of the charm of Batman, is that as a detective he can kind of start to work and figure things out and get ahead. And this Batman never got ahead of the Riddler. The Riddler pretty much had him at every turn. The Riddler killed everybody he was supposed to kill. Batman was never able to stop any of them except him killing Bruce Wayne, which, surprise. But so in that sense, I wasn't necessarily a huge fan of Batman not being able to get ahead of the Riddler via his detective work.
And it's interesting. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So, question. Well, did you read Hush?
No, I did not.
So, there are several times in this movie where I was wondering, were they making this version of Riddler an amalgamation of the Hush character? So, backstory on Hush. Hush is, his parents were friends with Thomas Wayne. And Thomas Wayne ends up getting his father killed. His son comes back for revenge, and so he figures out Bruce is Batman. All this blah blah blah. There's like a whole mini series based on it. And I thought this several times because his father's name was Thomas Elliot, I think. Last name's Elliot, but yeah, the reporter character that came up in the Falcone stuff, his last name was Elliot. And then even when they showed the smear campaign that Riddler made about Thomas Wayne, it had Hush in it. I was like, are they leading the Hush later, or are they making the characters like an amalgamation? I couldn't figure that out.
Yeah, Hush is a interesting character that I could see why you'd say that. I don't think they brought enough of that character in to say that it was a combination, but maybe they were throwing in little indicators that he could be there later. Because one of the takes that I saw about this movie is that this isn't a Batman origin story, it's a Batman villain origin story. Because we saw the Riddler sort of figure out who he is as a bad guy. We saw the Penguin kind of take over the Gotham criminal underworld towards the end of this. And we saw the Joker in the asylum kind of before he's had his first real interaction with Batman. So, yeah, maybe we'll get Hush at some point. And that is a character that I think they should adapt into live action at some point.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many similarities to the Hush miniseries. Like some of the Catwoman stuff is like very similar. I mean, just the fact that they had so many villains in it, like the Hush miniseries as well. And I think you're right. I think that's just a way to set it up, and maybe we're going to get Hush later. I've seen people say that this could set up Court of Owls, which, if we're getting a Court of Owls movies, I take it.
Oh, yeah. The Court of Owls is a very, that would be a great story to tell in live action because it's so grounded. It's not, some insane
Is it
villain.
grounded, though?
I mean, it's as grounded in terms of, we're not watching, a big steroided up guy like Bane. All the characters feel human for the most part.
Yeah, I get it. I just, that grounded thing, it just kind of feels like nails on a chalkboard sometimes.
Grounded in terms of Batman.
Yeah,
You can only be so grounded in reality when we're talking about a Batman story.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Nolan has started this trend that I don't like of people trying to make Batman into this thinking man's comic book character. When at the end of the day, he's still a man that dresses up as a bat and jumps off rooftops. Just come on.
Totally random side note here, but you guys would probably know this more about this than I would. But obviously, the culmination of the movie takes place at Gotham Square Garden, or whatever they call it. Is that literally just their version of Madison Square Garden? Is that a thing in the Batman universe, or was that something they made up for the movie, or what was that about?
I've seen that before in the Batman animated series. They would talk about Gotham Square Garden.
I do think it was a nod to that, but I can't look at it as a Chicagoan without going, that's James R. Thompson Center.
Just because do you guys know if they filmed it at Madison Square Garden? Because like the text was the same, everything was exactly the same.
They filmed it here in Chicago. Like that's a building in Chicago.
Oh wow! Oh man, yeah, they had me fooled because I thought it was Madison Square Garden.
No,
that's crazy.
I used to walk past that building all the time when I worked downtown. So when I looked at it, I'm like, no, that's clearly Chicago.
That's funny.
Yeah, haven't most Batman movies been filmed in Chicago? Like New York's really hard to film in
general.
Yeah.
They filmed The Dark Knight Rises in New York because it made for a better setting for the fact that it was supposed to be an island.
Yeah.
But the first two Dark Knight movies were shot in Chicago, and one of them, most of the scenes were shot near my friend's apartment at the time. And so he would call me up sometimes, and I'd be like, what's going on? He'd be like, oh, I'm waiting for this stupid freaking Batman movie to stop filming so I can get by.
Yeah, it is particularly Dark Knight. There was a lot of stuff filmed in a financial district, and I used to work in a financial district. So it was like right next door to where I worked. Like all of that stuff with Joker walking up LaSalle, like it was like right by the Board of Trade.
Oh yeah, everybody I know who lived in Chicago got to see the Tumblr way before like pictures of it were available because it was just around the city sometimes.
It's interesting. And that was one thing that stood out to me while watching the movie. But last question for you guys. I know there's a lot more we can get into. We'll end it on this though, and I feel like we definitely discussed this, Chris, when we broke down Suicide Squad a number of months ago. But with the DC projects, it feels like it's all over the place as far as some movies being great, some being just completely terrible, and somewhere in between. Obviously, this was a success for DC and just a great movie overall, being the highest grossing movie of 2022 so far. Chris, I'll start with you. Is this the movie? Could this be the movie to turn things around for DC, or like what? How far in advance do you see that projection going as far as the success of the movies going forward? Is this a turning point? Did we already have that turning point? What's the future hold for DC?
It's really tough to say because it feels like some people at DC want to do a big built-up movie universe like Marvel, and some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think at some point we are going to see another interconnected set of movies, but it wouldn't surprise me if this version of Batman just existed in his own Batman movies and we never even found out Superman existed in this universe. You know, it could just be a separate whole thing. And I wouldn't have a problem with that necessarily. But I do think that if they wanted to start a new movie universe, this is a good starting point.
Yeah, honestly, I think this iteration of Batman might be better off on his own, just based off the tone of the movie. And I mean, I guess if they make more Superman movies, it wouldn't have to necessarily be the same thing, but it might be a bit of a clash. But no, I would agree with that. What about you?
What we do need to talk about though was Catwoman in this movie.
Oh yeah, Zoe Kravitz. Yeah, go right ahead.
We have to discuss Zoe.
Yeah, go right ahead, Chris. Give me your thoughts on that. Yeah.
This might be an unpopular opinion, but this is my favorite version of Catwoman.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for one thing, I think Zoe Kravitz is a really good actress, so I think casting her was a great choice. But there were so many things about this version of the character that didn't feel ridiculous. Like, even the Anne Hathaway version, some of it was ridiculous. And this felt like
that movie wasn't very good. Can we say that at this point?
Yeah, I think we have to be able to say that The Dark Knight Rises is, I won't say toward the bottom, just because like Batman vs Superman exists, and then the Schumacher films exist. But like, as far as like, I guess of the acclaimed Batman movies, I think Dark Knight Rises is at the bottom of them.
Yeah, it's definitely the bottom of the Nolan trio. I think we can all agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
No, for sure it is.
But yeah, I really liked this version of Catwoman. For one thing, it did not at all feel forced that the character was bisexual. Like, that's just part of the character, and it was never really addressed as being anything unique.
Yeah.
So that made me happy to see, because Catwoman is a character who's been bisexual many times in the comics. So them adding that in there and making it just feel natural was really nice to see. But My only complaint is that her mask looked really stupid.
Yeah, I didn't like the look at all.
Everything else about her look was great. Like the skin tight leather suit that was actually practical and she could realistically put on in 10 seconds. I thought that was great. But the mask, that big hole and that little strap across the nose, I'm sorry, didn't work for me.
Yeah, I thought they did a great job of taking interpretations of the Catwoman character from a bunch of things and putting them together. Like they clearly did all of the long Halloween stuff with her. Like that's where the Falcone stuff comes from. That comes from like the what do you call it, the Loeb and Tim Cell stuff. And then they took like her look is like directly from Year One. Like the short haircut and everything, like the way she looks in the apartment, look, it's exactly from Year One. Yeah, I thought they did a good job with Catwoman. I didn't mind the mask because I feel like this is before she gets like real equipment and stuff. Like I feel like this was like a makeshift mask. I feel like a lot of the stuff in this movie was just like makeshift stuff. Like, and I kind of got the hint with that with Riddler. Like his whole look wasn't supposed to be like theatrical. It was supposed to be like him doing this makeshift look of what he thought Batman would enjoy.
You know, speaking of makeshift, Will, before we get your thoughts on that, we do have to talk about Batman's gadgets.
Yeah,
The fact that they didn't work.
Will, what did you think of Catwoman?
No, I mean, I'm a big Zoe Kravitz fan. I actually, right before this movie, and it wasn't intentional, was watching X-Men First Class. And I was like, oh, yeah, Zoe Kravitz was in this. Because it had been like 10 years since I'd seen it. And I'm a big fan of what she brought to the table. I thought the character as a whole was very well motivated. And I think probably had the best motivations for Catwoman we've seen in any of the live-action Batman movies. Really, my only issue was, like you said, the mask. In that, I don't know. I guess, what about any of that made her Catwoman, per se? I don't know. But otherwise, I thought she did a really great job. I was a really big fan.
I mean, she never really called herself Catwoman in this movie, and I feel like this movie is just doing what the Nolan stuff set up, in that Batman kind of escalated all of these criminals to be more like him.
Mm-hmm. What about Batman's gadgets? Did you want to discuss, Chris?
Oh, I loved his arsenal of stuff in this because it all felt as real as possible. Like, he wasn't flying around with his cape. He equipped a wingsuit before he jumped off of
that was
Gotham
cool, yeah.
Plaza. His grapple guns are never going to be realistic, so that is what it is. But like, all the stuff he had on him felt practical, and it never felt like there was a gadget that he pulled out that, like, it's the Bat Shark spray, like a one-purpose use item that I just happen to be carrying with me. Like,
I have to say, I am a big fan of Adam West 60s Batman.
Of course.
Just how insanely absurd it is. But I recognize what you're saying. Back Shark repellent is the best.
It's the best
ever happened in a movie.
It's the best ever, and the fact that they brought it into the Lego Batman movie made me really happy. But it felt like all his gadgets were like multi-purpose things that could come into use. And also, the best scene in the movie, like, I could almost not stop laughing when he jumps off the building and he's wingsuiting it up, and it's like, oh man, this is Batman's like first time really flying around the city, and like, he looks nervous as shit. And then he deploys the parachute and it gets stuck on the bridge and he just wipes the fuck out. I was like, and then he just gets up and limps into the darkness.
Yeah, I
don't
that
know
was
why that caught me so off guard, but I was laughing so hard.
That's one of those moments that adds to what I was saying, in that he's not like a very good Batman, and I don't mean that from an acting standpoint. I mean that from like a success standpoint. Like,
he's new at this.
Because the one other thing I wanted to talk about, because we talked about Zoe Kravitz, but I feel like the big standout that we've kind of circled around was Colin Farrell as the Penguin. And
that was fantastic.
He was amazing. And I brought him up because he was another one where like Batman was after him, and he's like, I don't know way you're after me. I didn't do anything. And he kind of didn't. And it was one of those. And it was like, this particular Batman wasn't like good at the things Batman's supposed to be good at, like the detective work or like saving lives. It's like he still has work to do to get there, or even like repelling. But in the case of the Penguin, I thought this was one of the best interpretations I've seen of the Penguin ever, and that includes anything animated. I thought Colin Farrell, one, disappeared into the role. You almost forget that this was Colin Farrell, but the way that he came off like such a just grotesque mobster was excellent stuff.
Do you think the
interrogation scene with Batman and Gordon, like yelling at him, and then him being like, "What are you, stupid? That's incorrect Spanish." Like, that was great.
Yes.
Oh yeah. With the flying rat thing or whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah.
What are you showing me here?
Yeah. Honestly, like, this is the most he's ever been able to hide his accent, because every once in a while you can, whenever, it's especially bad with Irish people, and being like half Irish, I see this more than I think some people do, because I have like straight up Irish family members that talk like that, and he can't always hide it with certain syllables. It just comes out. It's the same thing with British people. And in this one, like, if you had not told me that was Colin Farrell, I would have thought they just got some unknown actor who actually had that accent. He did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you guys think that one of the spin-off series is going to be for him? I feel like that would make the most sense.
They already announced that he was getting his own series on HBO Max.
Oh,
yeah.
Shit, I did not know that.
Is it a show?
Yeah, they announced the
like
new
a 6 or 8 episode thing, like Peacemaker.
Oh, awesome.
Cool. One of the few things that took me out of this, because you're right, he isn't a good Batman. He does several things in this movie that I was like, why did he do that? Like, of course, when he shot himself with the adrenaline, it's just like, huh? And then he just like went nuts on that guy. I was like, oh, all right.
That right there, that felt like a plant for. That's the serum that's eventually going to be Bane's serum. It was bright green. Like, to me, it felt like they were saying, this stuff already exists, and Bane is just going to use the shit out of it when he fights Batman.
Yeah, I thought they were trying to go with, like, a grounded and realistic, like, he really shot himself up with adrenaline to hop back up. But the thing that really took me out, to the point that I had to pause it and come back and watch the movie, is when he hops in the Batmobile for the first time and he's revving it up, and it looks like he's going to charge at them, and then he just stops and then waits for them to get in their cars. So I was like, but why would he do that? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I feel like, yeah. Do you think those are things that, I think you mentioned this before, Chris, that he'll improve upon in future installments, and that's why they did it in this movie, to show that he's not a perfect Batman yet?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't, like I said, it's not an origin story, but this still is not an experienced Batman. Yeah. So we're watching him learn on the job. And, you know, that's just one of those things that seemed like a bad decision, though, what Phil was talking about. Like,
he literally
just wanted an excuse for a Batmobile scene, you know?
He waited for them to get in the car so that he could get this long car chase where a bunch of people died and caused all these explosions. I was like, he could have just revved up and just rolled right up on them in the car. Why did he need to do that? Why did he need to get in the car to begin with? It was just weird. It was a weird
What did you guys think of the Batmobile? Because that's always a topic of discussion with these movies.
I thought it was cool for what it was. I thought it was cool that he did like a kind of like a practical muscle car. But yeah, that scene just threw me off. It was very cool when he gets like the makeshift ramp and he comes out of the back end of that explosion. That was super cool, but that car chase was completely pointless.
You talk about the 3-hour runtime. I mean, that's one of the things they could have shortened down. But yeah, especially from a logical storyline standpoint, that didn't make a whole lot of sense. But Phil, I'll ask you the same question I asked Chris earlier, as far as what you think this means for the DC universe, if anything, as far as, because I mean, we just had Peacemaker. We talked about that a little while ago. I thought that was a great series. Suicide Squad was great. Do you think this is a turning point for them? Are they turning things around? I mean, obviously, a year ago, we had the Snyder Cut, which we all universally shit on when we spoke about it about a year ago. So do you think this is a turning point, or what do you think the future holds for DC?
I don't know, because it seems like they're trying to hold on to certain things that work, like Shazam and Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and they're still hoping this Flash thing is
going to work.
That
second Aquaman movie ever sees the light of day with Amber Heard.
It's happening. Like, they put the synopsis out and everything for it.
It might be a while, because they might do what they did in Army of the Dead with Chris D'Elia and just completely edit Amber Heard out and replace her with another actress. I could absolutely 100% see that happening based on what's going on.
They're trying to hold on to what works, but they're also trying to get rid of what didn't work, or, they don't have any choice but to get rid of, because, like, most of the cast from Justice League is gone. Like, I'm assuming this will be the last thing they do with Ezra Miller.
Poor Michael Keaton got back in shape, came back as Batman.
Yeah, it seems like Henry Cavill's gone. Affleck's definitely gone.
Gal's got one more Wonder Woman coming at least.
Yeah, so it seems like they don't know if they want to reboot yet, or what they want to do. It's kind of like they're just like, hey, let's do this thing over here, and let's throw things at the wall and see what sticks over here. And in some ways it's working, because I do think their movies have gotten much better over the last few years. But it just doesn't seem like they have a clear plan of attack. It's just like, let's just, whatever works.
Yeah, and we got plenty more movies coming out, like you said. I know Shazam 2, I think it's still December. I know they shook up the lineup at one point. I haven't been following it closely, so I don't know exactly. But
you finally are getting Black Adam, and Rock has been cast as Black Adam for like over 10 years.
Yeah, I remember I was in college at that point when that fucking was announced, and it feels like it's been forever. Holy shit! I'm looking forward to that. Do you know when that's coming out, Phil? Is that this summer still, or is that later on this year?
Black Adam, I think that's this summer.
Okay, that's what I thought. Cool. Unless they pushed it back again, but I don't know. I gotta look that shit up. But what about you, Will? As far as what you think the future holds for DC, future movies, and how this was handled, and is it a turning point or no?
Well, first off, Black Adam is October.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I don't know. I hope this is kind of the reset moment that I know that DC has so badly wanted what Marvel has, which is a living, breathing universe of films. But I think they didn't want to do what Marvel did to get there. And they were never willing to do what Marvel did to get there, which was take a step back and establish all of these characters individually before thinking about how their interconnecting universe. And, they tried to jump into Justice League after one movie, right? I feel like I would love to see this be that kind of reset of like, hey, let's get a Batman movie. Let's get a Superman movie if you decide to recast that role. Let's get all of this going and then talk about how they cross over. And I think if they can do that, they'll end up with something much better than what the DC Extended Universe eventually had. Now, of course, there's all of those moving parts, right? We talked about the fact that, we have another Aquaman coming out. We have another Wonder Woman. We have another Shazam, and those all take place in that other universe. I don't know. I would just say I would love to just see a focus on Batman, no focus on who Batman crosses over with other than the Batman villains.
Yeah.
And I think this movie could be a good start to that.
I agree. I mean, with how successful this was, I can certainly see them already looking ahead to future crossovers, but I would hope they would just focus on what works for now, keep them in their own universes or whatever, and then maybe at some point down the road in a couple of years, maybe consider that. But I thought this was a great movie, though, and there's still plenty of competition as far as what it could face with Multiverse of I almost said matches. I know that was an Impact show like a fucking month ago. Multiverse of Madness coming out next weekend as we speak right now, which I'm looking forward to. I know Morbius just came out. Did any of you guys see Morbius or no?
No.
I didn't see Morbius.
Not going to.
I think that might be the one that we skip as far as talking
that'll
about.
be like, it'll be free on Hulu in 6 months or something, and then I'll give it a shot, but I'm not going to pay to see Jared Leto running around as a vampire.
Yeah.
I only paid to see 2 movies this year, and I am not disappointed. I've seen Batman and Sonic.
Me too.
And neither let me down. So
it's funny. I paid to see Scream 5, and I was like one of the only people that did not think it was very good at all. So I must be in the minority on that. But yeah, those are the only 3 movies I've actually paid to see this year. With Multiverse of Madness, not matches, happening next week, probably being the 4th. But I'm sure we'll talk about that soon after it comes out. Are you guys planning on seeing that next weekend or at some point soon after that?
Oh, next weekend. I don't not day one any of those movies. I have to see it as soon as it comes out, so
Nice.
I will be seeing Multiverse of Madness very soon.
Might have to just for that one. Like, normally I don't do day one, but that one's going to have so much spoilery shit that comes out with
Matter of fact, now that you say that, I need to buy some tickets, like, right now.
Me too.
So, I'm going to do that.
What about you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to see it day one. I was going to see Sonic. Matter of fact, the hilarious story of it is either the second or third time I saw Spider-Man, I saw it with my brother and his family, and like my nephew like turns to him at one point when I got up and walked away and was like, "Hey, we should go see Sonic 2 together." And I was like, "All right, he's gonna hold you to that," and he's like, "No, he'll forget about it." So I talked to him one day, and he's like, "Yeah, he totally forgot about it." And then the next week he goes, "Yeah, we're going to see Sonic 2," and it was on like a Saturday morning, and I said, "Podcasting, can't go. Sorry."
That's
missed
funny.
out.
Yeah, you missed out. It was a good movie.
It's actually a very good. I mean, it's a good movie in the sense that, like, as long as you like the first one, because it's so much like the first one. As a matter of fact, there's so many things that are follow-ups to the first one. I can't believe how many like references that are like, oh yeah, that's a follow-up thing, like the whole Olive Garden stuff.
Yeah, that was funny.
Like, oh yeah, that's a follow-up to the first movie, and then it's so many references to the games, and I'm like, I don't know, borderline like Die Hard Sonic. I side note really quick, I just recently discovered that there's a Sonic Twitter, and like, okay, I'm not that bad because like if you think like wrestling Twitter is bad, like take like one step into Sonic Twitter and recognize that at least wrestling is like this like actively moving thing that like has new stuff every week. But like Sonic Twitter is literally like thousands of people just talking about like this one little core set of games that like haven't changed, and but get like thousands of retweets that I accidentally stumbled upon it, and it is something else.
Video game Twitter in general is a weird space.
It is.
And we come from wrestling Twitter, so that says something.
Yeah.
I know, right? Well, like I said, wrestling Twitter is weird in itself, but at least there's like new content that we're talking about on a weekly basis. And
you're not buying Sonic Origins this summer? Come on.
I am buying Sonic Origins. Sorry, hold on, let me correct that. I bought Sonic Origins. I've already pre-ordered it in full.
See, look, listen. I feel like there are certain things that if Reg was not there, we would go on long tangents about on Rhapsody. And Sonic is probably one of them.
Oh yeah, for sure. We gotta do that like on the side one day. Just like, I don't know, some side Rhapsody stuff. That'd be great.
Well, on that note, you guys have Grab City every single Saturday on the Fightful channels. Saturdays at 12 Eastern, right? At noon, or is there a different time for it?
Yep, noon Eastern and 9 a.m. Pacific.
Perfect. Well, Will, people can check you out on the Twitter machine at William RBR. Be sure to follow you there. Will, any parting thoughts as we ride off into the sunset here?
No, I mean, like, I think Batman is continually going to be one of those franchises that is in, I don't know, I don't want to say good hands because obviously the hands are like changing a lot, but it's been in a good place for the last almost like 2 decades, and I don't know, I feel like this is one of those solo Batman adventures that you can't go wrong with.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I said earlier, I know a lot of people that aren't either Batman fans, superhero fans, or whatever that saw this movie and actually genuinely enjoyed it. Now you have, I mean, I guess you have an excuse if you don't have HBO Max, but if you have HBO Max, you have no excuse. It's on there right now, and it's full 3 hours of glory, so people got to check it out. Phil, you're on the Twitter machine at PhilDL616, Chris as well at BR_Doctor. You guys are great as always. Will, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah, Phil, Chris, I'm sure we'll talk tomorrow about Morbius, right?
Yeah, sure. We'll have to talk about Moon Knight eventually when the season's over.
Well, yesterday was episode 5. I think it ends next week, so I think we have, we could maybe talk about it the week after. I think the next show that we do has got to be Multiverse of Madness, so maybe next weekend or something we could talk about that.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.